at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers play their final 6 games of the regular season on the road beginning tonight at Arizona. Any combination of 3 wins for the Dodgers or 3 losses by San Diego gives the Dodgers their 12th NL West title in 13 seasons. Chargers running back Najee Harris, signed in the offseason as a free agent, will miss the rest of the season with a torn Achilles tendon. Harris suffered a non-contact injury in the second quarter of Sunday's win over Denver. After week 3, Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert leads the NFL in passing yardage with 860. Rams wide receiver Puka Nacua leads the NFL with 333 receiving yards. Alumni around the country from HBCU Howard University will be in a good mood this week. Howard's football team snapped an 8-game losing streak to Hampton with a 34-7 win Saturday in the Battle of the Real HU. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you ready to be a part of the conversation that will help shape our nation's future? Get ready to join us for the Left Coast Forum, Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech, where progressive voices will come together to tackle the issues that matter most to working families across Los Angeles and beyond. From economic justice to climate action, from healthcare to housing, we're bringing together the brightest minds and most passionate advocates for real solutions and real change. With workshops, 2 major keynote addresses, and a closing reception with great music and good food. It's the Left Coast Forum, where your voice matters and your ideas take action. Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. Brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and the LA Progressive. The future won't wait, and neither should you. Mark your calendar now to be there and be heard. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details.
Don't have to be beautiful to turn me on. I just need your body, baby, from dusk till dawn. You don't need experience to turn me out. Just leave it all up to me. I'm gonna show you what it's all about. You don't have to be rich to be my girl. You don't have to be cool to rule my world. Ain't no particular sign I'm more compatible with. I just want your extra time and your kiss.
Look, John Wood Jr. is supposed to be a Republican, but he's winning some points on his song selection. So I don't know. We may be vibing instead of sparring up in here, John Wood Jr. I said, what's your favorite Prince song? And he had more than one. So there we go.
I'm a Soul Train Republican.
A Soul Train Republican. Look, we're on a Under the Cherry Moon kick because this is from the Parade album also, the Under the Cherry Moon soundtrack. So the last hour we played Mountains, which is the closing song in the film Under the Cherry Moon. But
yeah. That's right.
Yeah. But your parents are musicians, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. Well, my mother's an R&B singer. Her name is Deonda. Some folks will know her and her music around town. Of course, Mom was dancing on Soul Train.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Late 70s, I guess, maybe early 80s. Shout out to my mom because she probably was. And my dad was a jazz pianist who recorded with the likes of Billy Higgins on the West Coast here, founder of the World Stage here, right here in Leimert Park, and also folks like tenor saxophonist Joe Henderson and trumpet player Woody Shaw and Joe Dumas and all sorts of folks. So I come from a musical background primarily, at least just in terms of sort of the family orientation and so forth, and politics and all that. Kind of became something that I progressed into over time. But music and culture is sort of my bedrock in terms of my upbringing. So that's a little bit of the origin. there.
Look, we got to have it. We got to have it. Otherwise, I feel like we become less human.
Yeah.
Right? Without
Mhm.
creativity, without art, without music in particular, we become less human. And I think that when you start to see the erosion of the arts,
Yeah.
I think about, now we're getting into politics, but there is a relationship, right?
There's a very deep relationship.
Du Bois talks about, and I know you read a lot, right? Du Bois
try.
talks about how all art is propaganda, right?
Mm.
All art is propaganda,
Mm.
and art. I quoted Tony Kate Bambara before that the role of the artist is to make the movement irresistible, right? So art and politics are connected. We could talk about Amiri Baraka's work, many others. Since I'm sitting in Dominique DePrima's chair, we got to invoke her dad, Amiri Baraka. But I think that's really important. And it also allows people like you and I to be in conversation with each other, not starting off with, but you're a Republican, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. I mean, you know, my father, who is very much these days, much more of a right wing sort of Republican.
Really?
Yeah. But he raised me with this view that social change does not manifest in the absence of music that speaks to the soul, right? So my dad, I mean, dad's got a very interesting background. You know, so you and I both have one white parent, I believe. My dad is from the South originally, he's from Tennessee, but he mostly grew up in Brentwood here in LA. And his father was a man named Randy Wood, who owned what at the time was the biggest independent record label in America. So it was like Pat Boone and Lawrence Welk and so on and so forth. But before that, Grandpa started a radio show, which was the first radio show to broadcast rhythm and blues and gospel music to a national audience, black music essentially. And so that launched the careers of Mahalia Jackson and Arthur Alexander and Solomon Burke and folks like that. So my dad grew up in the midst of, you know, frankly, just a great deal of privilege and so forth, but also in a very particular context where he fell in love with black music and hence black culture sort of early on. And you sort of extend it all the way out. And that's got something to do with how I sort of got here, right? But I was raised in the storyline, which essentially said that, you know, the cultural progress of America in the 1960s and so forth rode in part on the back of a soundtrack. It had to do with Sam Cooke. It had to do with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. It had to do with the fact that you had a culture that was able to give people a sort of sense of transcendent commonality, even in the midst of all of the sort of, you know, racial politics of the era. Now, my dad wasn't really a great student of the racial politics of the era, but he was a student of American popular culture. And so as I got older and I started reading about the civil rights movement and Dr. King and Bayard Rustin and Ella Clark and Septima Clark and some of the others, part of what struck me was King's treatment of the role of music, even in the civil rights movement. The idea that without the soulful sounds of the protesters, and, you know, I mean, of course, we think of We Shall Overcome as being this great sort of moral anthem and so forth, that the tone and spirit of the movement, which set a tone and spirit for the larger culture, would not have congealed in the way that it did. So I've always looked at music in particular and art and culture in general as being indispensable to the larger sort of transformational social project that a lot of people are engaged in. But I don't think many of us actually see the connection, because working out of different parts of our brains when we think about art on the one hand and politics on the other. But to just bring it all the way back to Du Bois, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what Du Bois was trying to, in a sense, solidify with the Harlem Renaissance and stuff. He was a little elitist in kind of how he went about it. You know, Du Bois didn't like jazz. Du Bois didn't really like the blues, not so much. He was about high culture and, you know, Roland Hayes and classical music and so on and so forth. But the premise is correct. You know, you cannot shift conscious with only debate, only political arguments, so forth. That conversation is important, but you got to speak to the other parts of the anatomy of the soul. And for that, you need art. And for that, you need music. For that, you need culture. So yeah,
absolutely.
My opening.
Have you read Shauna Redmond's Anthem?
No, okay. I have not. Yeah.
Shauna Redmond, who's one of, I think, our greatest contemporary minds. She's at Columbia now, used to be at UCLA. She wrote a book called Anthem. Her favorite book, my favorite book of hers also is another artist
Mm.
about Paul Robeson called
Mhm.
Everything Man. That's
Okay.
my
Mm.
favorite Shauna Redmond piece
Mm.
because you know Paul Robeson was an everything man. He could do
Yeah.
everything. He was a
Mhm.
and was the top at everything. Football player and a singer and an actor and a thinker and a
Right,
you
right.
know
Renaissance man.
revolutionary, right?
Yeah.
Globalist, right?
Mm.
You know, so her book Everything Man is phenomenal, but this book Anthem really makes the point that you're making, that you can't have a movement devoid of music, right?
Right.
You need music literally. And one of my best friends, I'm bragging now, but one of my best friends is an artist, an actor named Kendrick Sampson, who
I know the name.
Kendrick played on Issa Rae's show, right?
Right, yeah.
But Kendrick often talks about like in these new marches, which we'll talk about, like the importance of those marches. And these new marches, what they're missing is something that I think we're much better at, and partly because we inherited from previous Black liberation movements, is the rhythm of the march itself. Right? The rhythm of the march. Where are our chant leaders? Where are our singers? What are we going to sing? Right. And so sometimes with the anti-ICE marches, there were not good chants.
Right.
Like we're out of rhythm.
Yeah.
And you need
We could turn that into a joke, but you're making a serious point. I
you need the art is a soothing of the soul. And to speak, but also you literally need the music so that you can be in rhythm as you're moving down the street.
There's a writer named and I don't know their work terribly well, but I believe Karuna Montana, who was recommended to me by my friend and mentor Harry Boyd, whose father was the only white member of staff on the Southern Christian Leadership Conference under King, and Harry Jr. was himself a field operator for King during the latter part of the movement. And but in Karuna Montana's work, she's a scholar on nonviolence, particularly during the era of Gandhi in India. And she writes about how the tone of, because there were sounds involved in that tradition as well, and how the tone of the movement was calibrated to call people into it, right? It was calibrated in a way to sort of draw in on an ambient level, sort of the attention and the sensitivity of people who otherwise might just be passive observers or even resistant, to sort of give people the sense that there was a space that you could come into, right? And that was replicated and expounded upon in the very musicality of the civil rights movement, and particularly the nonviolent movement, which I sort of say is sort of a movement within a movement, just as the Black Power movement was a movement within a movement. But in the context of the nonviolent movement, though, creating the environment in which people could be drawn in, was itself not just a political expression, but an artistic expression fundamentally, and a spiritual one, right? And so and I think that becomes the other component, the spiritual component of all of this, right? Politics, art and music, spirituality, even faith, right? I tend to believe that a lot of times we want to think in terms of political transformation as being a narrow sort of means to an end. Like we've got to move enough votes to elect the right people, to pass the right bills, to solve all of our problems. But really, there's no way of envisioning the transformation of society that doesn't, on some level, envision the transformation of the soul. And if we're talking about the transformation of the soul, we're talking about more than just politics, including politics, but more than just politics.
That's right. So look, we just jumped right in it. We didn't do any intros, nothing.
This is our first time meeting. This is our first
but
time
I'm enjoying the meeting, which is
I
weird. I was warned he's a Republican, but it's and when we come forward, I'll also talk about, because I was accused of some really ridiculous stuff yesterday,
Okay.
like
I missed
caping
it.
for the
Okay.
Democratic Party.
Oh yeah.
And I'm going, me? Like I like you can look up my history.
Yeah.
Can't stand the Democrats, but I can't stand the Republicans
Mm.
either. So
That's
when
all right.
we come forward, I want to talk
Yeah.
with John Wood Jr. about politics and about a two-party system, which I think both parties are absolutely devilish. Like I don't want to understate it. We're going to come forward and have that conversation with John Wood Jr. You're welcome in, because in the chat, people are saying, bring so-and-so on. Whoever so-and-so is can call in. The phone lines are open. 800-920-1580, 800-920-1580, right here on First Things First. More to come.
A safe place to go loud. A great place for progressive politics. KBLA Talk 1580.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte. Let's preserve Black land stories before they're lost forever. I want to personally invite you to be a part of something historic. As journalist in residence for the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, I've joined forces with powerhouse attorney and social justice champion George Fothery, the man who helped make history by delivering justice to the Bruce family in Manhattan Beach, securing the first known return of land unjustly taken from Black owners by a local government. That victory was monumental, but it was just the beginning. For generations, Black families have acquired land through grit, faith, and determination, only to lose it through violence, legal loopholes, forced sales, and systematic racism. What's been taken goes far beyond dirt and deeds. It's the erasure of wealth, identity, and legacy. That's why we've launched the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, a national effort to collect, protect, and preserve the stories of Black land lost before they're buried, forgotten, or erased altogether. Because there's power in telling Black stories, there is resistance in remembering, and there's justice in being seen and heard. This is where you come in. We're inviting you to be a part of this historic Black narrative archive. If you or someone you know has experienced land loss, displacement, or forced property sales, your story deserves to be heard and remembered. Your story belongs in this archive. Your truth matters not just to your family, but to our collective future. Visit blacklandlost.org today. Fill out our simple intake form and add your voice to the National Archive of Remembrance, Resilience, and Reckoning. Let's make these stories live on, not in whispers, but on the record. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With the Capital One Venture X card, you earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy. Plus, you get premium benefits at a collection of luxury hotels when you book on Capital One Travel. And with Venture X, you get access to over 1,000 airport lounges worldwide. Open up a world of travel possibilities with the Capital One Venture X card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Exciting news, ladies! Always Discreet Boutique Bladder Leak underwear are available in black and printed design. Protect yourself with style. These fit and feel just like real underwear, and they give you up to 0 leaks, 0 odor. Designed for all shapes and sizes, they give you the confidence to be fully yourself. Don't let bladder leaks hold you back. Buy Always Discreet Boutique Bladder Leak underwear now.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DePrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
And we are in conversation. I guess I suppose I should do an introduction of John Wood Jr., but we just kind of jumped right into the conversation. My name is Melina Abdullah. I'm sitting in Dominique DePrima's chair this morning, and I'm in conversation with John Wood Jr. About all things, about music. We're about to hop in this conversation about the two-party system, about politics. We've been talking about books, but John Wood Jr., you actually have kind of criticisms of bipartisanship. Your organization is it Braver Angels?
Braver Angels.
Braver Angels. Yeah. And then you also have a show right here on KBLA.
I do.
And are often in conversation with Tavis Smiley. So grateful. But you're a registered Republican.
I am. I was a nominee for Congress. Years ago.
You were one of the youngest ever, right? In California.
I was the youngest. I was the youngest in my election cycle. And And it's funny because that race wound up being an opportunity for me to enter into a conversation that I had no resume for. What I had was, I was a young person who knew the issues really well and knew that both in addition to speaking to policy, I wanted to speak to sort of a cultural change, echoing the themes of the beloved community. Right?
Mhm.
And I ran as a hope and change Republican. There's a story behind that because I had, I grew up sort of middle class, multicultural suburb, Culver City, California. So, right down the street here. And I was very much taken by sort of the Obama campaign and the Obama message and whatnot. And I saw sort of a lot of myself in Barack Obama and his sort of the story he told. And so I embraced that. And in the aftermath of his campaign, set about trying to sort of learn a lot more about conservatism in an effort to bring Republicans into the Obama movement. My dad at that point had become much more conservative and so forth. But I sort of found myself on a bit of a journey where a number of things kind of collided at the same time. I experienced a religious conversion. I didn't grow up thinking of myself as a Christian, but I met a woman from a traditional Black Baptist background, and I tell the story a little bit. And it makes people laugh, but I came from a more sort of New Age kind of spiritual kind of perspective at that point. And we had this sort of philosophy versus theology confrontation where I said something kind of condescending at the time. And we were both working as fundraisers for the Democratic National Committee. Actually, we're like 19 and 20 years old. I said something like, God, you're so smart. How can you believe in this book full of fairy tales and superstitions? If God is real, it can't be about xenophobia and all these restrictions and prejudice and so forth. If God is real, it's got to be about higher vibration, enlightenment, positive energy. God's got to be about love. To which she said to me, that's right. For though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, if I have not love, I've become a sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. If I have faith to move mountains and knowledge to understand all mysteries, if I have not love, it profits me nothing. If I give my goods to feed the poor, my body to be burned, if I have not love, I am nothing. And I listened to her say that, and I was like, wow, that's beautiful. Did you write that? And she was like, no, fool, that's First Corinthians. So that sort of set me up on this. We can get into religion as much or as little as we want to, but that kind of put me in motion towards becoming, something of a Bible-believing Christian, sort of in touch with the Black church tradition. At the same time, I was sort of studying conservatism in ways that actually allowed me to discover things that appealed to me, at least on a philosophical level. I studied African American history from a more sort of conservative vantage point. I was listening to Tavis and Larry Elder going back and forth and so on and so forth and keeping score and whatnot. And at that time, Larry was saying a lot of things that sort of made sense to me, particularly in the context of my middle class sort of experience. And ultimately, she joined the army. We moved to a military town. It was much more conservative. And so I came to think of myself as a Republican, but I still had what for me was a beloved community vision that I thought Obama was an echo of, seeking to sort of transcend both race and partisanship in America. And so when I ran for Congress in 2014, of course, Dominique's folks will know I ran against Auntie.
Maxine Waters.
That's right.
I wasn't going to out you on that because
that's okay.
You doing good.
People,
and then we like, no, you did not.
People
right.
know. I will say that I didn't really run so much against Max. It's just we moved back to South LA. So that's just where we
You were in the district.
I was in the district, yeah, and I wanted to be a part of the conversation. I didn't think it was likely that I was going to be able to upset Maxine Waters. Although I will just point out that I did do better than any Republican or Democrat who's ever run against Maxine Waters. I tell people I lost in the smallest landslide of anybody who ever made the attempt. But it really was a campaign that was focused on trying to create the context for understanding and a degree of reconciliation. The idea that we can have community across racial lines, across religious lines, and yes, even political lines. And so my work with Braver Angels is sort of pointed in the same direction. I'll say that what has shifted in me in sort of the third act of my sort of political consciousness, you could say, and I'm still a registered Republican, but reckoning with what for me are particularly sort of the class-based distinctions that exist between modalities of the Black experience, if you will, and how much the inequality and the inequity of modern life in America along class lines that highly correlate to race, right? So you can't entirely pull the racial reality out of the class reality, but how systematically reinforced that is by the practices of so many of our institutions and so forth. So I've come to sort of take a second look a little bit at a lot of the sort of arguments along the lines of systemic racism and even derived from critical race theory, even while I still consider myself to be fundamentally conservative in my cultural and even some of my market and economic sort of viewpoints. So, I'm still wading through the nuances of all that. But the reason I voted for you, Doctor, and the reason I voted for Cornel West is because at the end of the day, I do believe that character is destiny. I do believe that there are qualities of the soul that transcend our positionality with respect to politics. And, I've been a great admirer of Cornel West. Dominique called me Cornel West Republican the other day. And I wrap my arms around that. I've been a great admirer of the professor for a long time because in my view, Dr. King spoke a transcendent message which shifted the conscience of America, even while it didn't solve all problems. And I don't see too many people carrying that flame, but I do see Professor West as being a guardian of that flame. And I saw your ticket, you and the professor both, as even if you are in my politics, are still likely going to be very different in many ways. But I still see you as coming from the depth, from the wellspring of conscience in the Black tradition, right? And those are things that I value greatly and that I think America needs if she's both going to transform and survive.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. And I think that for me, when Dr. West asked me to run with him, it was one of the greatest honors of my life that, I've also followed him for many, many years. And as an undergraduate, followed him, read all of his books, inspired by his speeches. But it is what you're saying. It's not just his brilliance, it's his character, right? It's who he is as a human being that I admired most. And so that's what, and I think that does shape our politics, right? Like now here's where we gonna get to it. I don't think you can be a good human being and say it's okay to starve people to death in man-made famine in Gaza. I don't think you can be a good human being and say that. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, a decline of state. You cannot be for mass starvation of people, of human beings. That is sinful and evil, right? If you drive down the street and you see people living unhoused, including mothers and children living in tents, and instead of saying, how do we house them, you say, how do we criminalize them? Then you are not a good human being. So I think this question of character that you raised, character is first, which is why I've never been a Republican. I will never vote for a Republican, right? But it's also why when you came in and you did come in and you talked about the importance of being egoless, right? I can feel you. It's probably why Sister Jan said she loves you, right?
Shout out to Sister Jan.
And I think that that's really important. The importance of being a human being who also, I like your wife, I was raised Baptist. So I was raised in the Black church, Greater Faith Baptist Church in Oakland, and then reverted to Islam because I got married to a Muslim. Right. And so became a Muslim, reverted to Islam when I was 28 years old. And, I think those traditions, both traditions, require a submission to God and to God's will, and that we do God's work on this earth. So I know we got people calling in. You're welcome to call in 800-920-1580. We got more coming forward with John Wood Jr.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. The White House is criticizing Democrats who voted against a resolution to honor Charlie Kirk.
58 House Democrats voted no, and 38 voted present on a resolution that simply stated condemning in the strongest possible terms the assassination of Charles James Kirk and all forms of political violence.
The press secretary added President Trump will go after those who may be funding the violence. President Trump will award Black Dr. Ben Carson the Presidential Medal of Freedom during an event at Mount Vernon. Carson, a top VP contender, served as HUD secretary during the first Trump administration and built a close bond with the president. And California high schools are delaying a new ethnic studies class due to funding gaps and political tensions. Some districts are offering it independently despite the $276 million shortfall. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique. But you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers play their final 6 games of the regular season on the road beginning tonight at Arizona. Any combination of 3 wins for the Dodgers or 3 losses by San Diego gives the Dodgers their 12th NL West title in 13 seasons. Chargers running back Najee Harris, signed in the offseason as a free agent, will miss the rest of the season with a torn Achilles tendon. Harris suffered a non-contact injury in the second quarter of Sunday's win over Denver. After week 3, Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert leads the NFL in passing yardage with 860. Rams wide receiver Puka Nacua leads the NFL with 333 receiving yards. Alumni around the country from HBCU Howard University will be in a good mood this week. Howard's football team snapped an 8-game losing streak to Hampton with a 34-7 win Saturday in the Battle of the Real HU. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Is reviewing life insurance on your to-do list? Now's the perfect time to add it. A friend recently told me that securing life insurance sooner rather than later can help you lock in lower rates for years to come. So I bumped this up on my list and got it done. I called SelectQuote and couldn't believe how easy and affordable life insurance is. I'm 40 and got a $500,000 policy for $16 a month. My husband's also 40 and his $500,000 policy was only $18 a month. Plus, with SelectQuote's same-day coverage, there was no medical exam required and we were covered by the time we hung up. Knowing I have this checked off my list feels amazing, but the peace of mind knowing my family is protected feels even better.
Call SelectQuote at 1-800-729-7070. That's 1-800-729-7070. Or go to SelectQuote.com to get your free quote today. That's 1-800-729-7070. Details on example rate at SelectQuote.com.
Hey, KBLA 1580 delegation, your health matters to us. We know that information is power, especially when it comes to prevention and treatment. That's why we're proud to introduce the brand new KBLA Health and Wellness Hub. This online space is built just for you, connecting our community to trusted health resources, culturally relevant care, and even access to diverse clinical trials and emerging therapies. Whether you're looking for information on common conditions, mental health support, or just want to stay on top of your wellness journey, we got you. And the best part, it's all on our website at KBLA1580.com. Accessible, empowering, community-focused. So just go to KBLA1580.com and click on the Health and Wellness Hub icon, because knowledge is power and your health is everything. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
The following is a paid advertisement by Family Vacation Getaways with the purpose of soliciting sales of vacation ownership. For complete details, please visit fvgradio.com. If you want a 100% complimentary stay at a luxury resort in Cancun, airfare not included, then Family Vacation Getaways is your ticket to paradise. See website for complete details. We're giving away 5 days and 4 nights to the first 50 callers who can name an animal that lays eggs and is not a bird. An animal that lays eggs and is not a bird. Do you know it? Call now, 800-868-6431, 800-868-6431. You're also eligible for an exciting bonus vacation to Orlando, Florida for just $498. And don't worry about anything ruining your plans. We can extend your travel up to 18 months. Name an animal that lays eggs and is not a bird, and get a complimentary Cancun resort stay and an optional bonus vacation to Orlando for just $498. What are you waiting for? Call 800-868-6431, 800-868-6431, and give us your answer. The proceeding is not a contest and is a paid advertisement by Family Vacation Getaways and not sponsored by this program or its affiliates.
We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for progressive talk radio. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
My name is Melina Abdullah, and I get to sit in the Queen's chair while Dominique DePrima gets a little restorative time. Grateful for that, and grateful to be in conversation with John Wood Jr. One of the things I want to make sure that we lift up, because this was raised yesterday, right? We were talking about Sheila Bates and I, who's our policy coordinator for Black Lives Matter Grassroots. Mm-hmm. We were talking about some of the policy victories that we see, right? And that we've won, that, we're advancing a couple of bills. One of them is AB 7, which will give priority admission to Black students to UCs and CSUs if the governor signs it, but it passed through the legislature. And there was a caller who said, well, how can you work with that legislator? I disagree with their assessment of the legislator. The author is Isaac Bryan. I think Isaac has made some mistakes, and I think he's a really good human being. Yeah. And I agree with most of his politics, right? I agree with people have criticized him. It's wild to me for Christmas in the park, right? That I think it's good to bring snow and joy and presents and hot chocolate to kids who might not get it. I think that's a good thing.
What's the criticism of Christmas in the park?
We don't need that. We need reparations.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the criticism.
Okay.
But the point I think I wanted to get to is, I think there's a few lines for me that if you take a particular political stand, I can't like you as a human being. But one of the things I'm really grateful for, and I inherited this from my mother, is I can vehemently disagree with your politics. I can even protest your house, right? Because we the masters of rolling up on somebody's house, right?
Yeah.
I like a roll up on a politician. I like to do that. I can yell at you at a restaurant, and I can still want you to be healthy and well.
Yeah, right.
Unless you're waging war on our people. If you're literally waging war on our people, can't be all good, right?
Right.
And so I want to uplift that, because I think that we probably have fundamental disagreements on some political issues.
Sure.
But I think that it's possible, and I would love to give your take on it. I think it's possible even when we have fundamental disagreements, and we should not. I don't believe in being soft about this. When we come off the air, I'm going straight to police commission meeting, and I'm going to cuss out the police chief, and I'm going to probably tell off some of the people on the police commission, right? Doesn't mean I don't like Teresa Gordon, the new police commission president. It's not personal.
Right.
But I would be betraying what I feel like I'm called to do as my life's purpose if I don't tell her off. There's a few people who get that on the police commission. There was a commissioner named Cynthia McLean Hill who totally got it. And afterwards would be like, do y'all need water in here? Right? Which is great.
Yeah.
What is your take on that? On how do we not, I don't ever want to abandon or betray my beliefs. And I'm going to fight for reparations. I'm going to fight for Black freedom. I'm going to fight to abolish the police. I'm going to fight to end capitalism. Right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean I hate somebody or I want to see harm to come to them, because we have disagreements on that.
Yeah, no, actually, I really appreciate you articulating it and that way. And because you are a frontline activist and not just somebody who's rendering opinions, the balance you're striking is sort of all the more profound because as a revolutionary, you're sort of obligated to be a bit disruptive, I think, right? Just as a means of drawing people's moral attention. And yet the temptation, I think, in having to be confrontational is to also adopt an interior sort of position of contempt for the human being who you're opposing in many cases. But you're articulating, I think, sort of a revolutionary zeal that is still rooted in transcendent human love. And I think that that's the balance. In the context of the work that I do at Braver Angels, I say that there are two imperatives that we always have to be mindful of simultaneously, and they are in tension with each other. Imperative number one is engaging in the short-term political project of advocacy, right? Campaigning for the candidate that you believe in or support, advocating for the policy that you want to see changed, and engage in the actual conflict and competition, the rough and tumble of democratic life itself. But then the second project is long-term, but no less urgent on a moral spiritual level. And that's doing everything we can do, starting with our internal disposition to maintain the fabric of community or to strengthen the fabric of community, such that even as we are trying to defeat each other to the greatest extent possible, we can be in some degree of community with each other. And even if we're not in close community with each other, to maintain the pathway towards communicating moral witness so that you can actually move somebody who's farther out on the edge of where you are. So I want to take it back to a couple of things you said in the last segment. One is just a brief sort of aside, because you mentioned not voting for Republican, which I understand. But I would just point out as a historical sort of fact, Black Democratic voters helped shift the Democratic Party in a direction of greater sort of social progressivism during an era in which the base constituency of the Democratic Party was essentially the Dixiecratic South, right? Mm-hmm. So you had your progressives, your Adlai Stevensons, your Northeastern liberals, and so forth. But I do think that, and again, this isn't to gloss over any differences you and I might have, but I do try to hold a space even within the Republican Party. And I don't think I'm the only one, even if it does feel kind of lonely. But, I try to hold a pro-Black space within the Republican Party. And when I say pro-Black, I don't just mean that in jingoistic terms. I mean pro-Black tradition, right? The historic sort of moral quest for dignity and equality, not just for Black people, but all people, that defines a Black American experience, which in and of itself is definitive of a Central American experience, particularly in relation to its stated values and allowing those stated values to actually manifest in terms of our conscious practice. You don't have progress in that direction in a deep and meaningful way without the Black freedom tradition. And the Republican Party, ostensibly, of course, was founded, on the premise of emancipation. So I try to bear some witness to the idea that the Republican Party could be different tomorrow than it is today, right? And trying to keep that open.
Yeah. So why choose though the Republican? So here's my thing. Mm-hmm. When I said I can't see myself ever voting for a Republican, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I probably won't vote for a Democrat either, right? Like the two-party system, and I've witnessed it, especially in this last legislative cycle, seems completely owned by capitalist interests that are not in the interests of the people, right? So there was this bill, AB 715. So 7 was good, 715 is terrible. 715 will criminalize classroom teachers for wearing keffiyehs to class, for having a Palestinian flag, or doing anything that makes people who identify with Israel feel uncomfortable, right? I know that it is funded by the right wing. We see a copycat bill now moving in Massachusetts, right? It's the same bill, right? The Democrats within the California legislature, which has a super majority, they pushed that bill. Why? Because JPAC told them to. Why in Congress? Because APAC tells them to, right? So, and then we can go beyond that. We can talk about, what does Walmart tell them to do? What does big tech tell them to do? What does big oil tell them to do? So why the Republican Party and not, I mean, although you're a Cornell West voter and we'll pick it up on the other side. Why the Republican Party and not say, let's build third parties, let's be independents, let's figure out a way to harness our power, our real power, and move forward a liberation agenda. More with John Wood when we come forward.
More of First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
JP Morgan Chase offers tips for the local business owners in 2025. Small business landscape is ever changing, and the Los Angeles market is no exception. A startup or legacy business, revisiting your mission statement and recalibrating offerings can renew opportunities for growth and innovations. Programs like Chase for Business Coaching for Impact gives entrepreneurs access to expert guidance, helping you streamline operations, strategize your growth, and navigate complex challenges. Businesses with a clear sense of purpose can navigate any challenge effectively, but also build stronger customer loyalty. Visit chase.com/coaching for impact for more information. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
Why'd I go to the doctor? My heart would race just taking my son to practice. It didn't feel right. So I got checked out. Turns out I have atrial fibrillation, which increases the risk of stroke about 5 times.
Symptoms like irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain, shortness of breath, fatigue, or lightheadedness can come and go. But if it's AFib, the risk of stroke remains. If you have symptoms, contact a doctor.
I'm so glad I did.
Visit notimetowait.com. Sponsored by Bristol Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DePrima on First Things First.
Yeah. Right. My name is Melina Abdullah, and I am sitting with John Wood Jr., who I expected to be rolling on the floor, scrapping with, but I'm vibing with, right? We vibing.
Yeah,
No, so I'm grateful for the introduction, Dominique DePrima introducing us, and I'm grateful for the conversation. I think it does speak to, and there was something I wanted to get out before I get to back to the question about third parties, and then also to a question in the chat about where you stand on reparations. That sometimes some people accuse folks. I define myself as a revolutionary, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And some people think that revolution means constantly warring.
Right.
But revolution, at the core of revolution, and Dr. Huey P. Newton teaches this as well, right? At the core of revolution has to be love, radical love for the people. And during the break, you and I were talking about like our humanity and holding on to our humanity and how important our humanity is. And so it doesn't mean, and we're going to get to some of these questions in a sec. There's also phone lines I got to go to. But it doesn't mean that I won't have, when we get to it, I'm sure I'm going to have fundamental disagreements with you. But that doesn't mean that and we began the conversation about being children of God, right? Servants of God. It doesn't mean I don't see that and can't feel that in you. And so that means I'm a fight you if you don't believe in reparations. But it doesn't mean that I don't see you. You know, so let's get to Micah calling in on line 2, and then we'll get back to that question about third parties.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes. How you doing?
I'm well, but not as well as I'd like to be. I'm calling because, you know, I mean, you spoke of Isaac being a good guy, you know, and he may be personally, but as for the community, he went in, and I believe that he has sold us out because our ancestors have built this country, and there's no bill, there's no anything that is more pertinent and upfront than reparations at this time for our people. I mean, it's been a long time coming, even back in the day even before when Mr. People was pushing it. You speak of, you know, him putting the snow in the park and calling out the police and different things like that. And, you know, that's really like the icing on the cake, but we really don't need that as a people. We need our reparations so we can build our community. You know what I'm saying? I've seen Black Lives Matter, which you are a co-founder of. You have you know, you push for the immigrants, you know what I'm saying? You push for Palestine, you know what I'm saying? I mean, but just last night, I was walking down the street and the brother's laying on the sidewalk, and I call the fire department, and they come up and they say, hey, you know what? He's just drunk. I'm like, yeah, but he says he has chest pains, take him to the hospital. Oh, well, you know, he's just going to take up a bed for somebody who really needs it. You know, they're not caring about us as Black people out here in these streets, and it's heartbreaking. You know what I'm saying? So reparations is the number one thing we need so we can become self-sufficient in rebuilding our communities from the communities that they've destroyed, that they flooded, that they redlined, their enslavement, all of that. So we don't need any bills. We don't trying to go to their institutions. We need to create our own college. I mean, we can do all these things independently with reparations. So I just really want to push that because right now it just seems like
are you gonna
a whole lot of
Can I respond to you?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I appreciate your call, and I am a reparationist. I've been working on reparations, been writing about reparations since the 90s. I've been pushing for our real reparations bills. I was deeply involved in trying to get the bills passed last legislative cycle. I don't think reparations is the only thing, but I think it's at the top of an agenda. And where I think we may have some differences is I believe in freedom for Black people first and for everybody else. I don't believe that Black freedom means oppressing people in Palestine. And I'm on the front lines doing work all the time. And so because I believe in reparations doesn't mean I'm not about to roll over to LA Police Commission and cuss out the police chief. I know, I know,
She's coming.
and he knows I'm coming. I know that as the mother of 3 children, including a son whose voice has gotten deep and shoulders have gotten broad, that LAPD poses an imminent threat to him. And so, I don't think that it's a problem. You may think it's a problem, but I don't think that it's a problem that I choose to challenge police. I don't think that it's a problem that as a Muslim woman that I choose to say that I have a right to my own religion in a classroom, right? I'm Black and Muslim at the same time. And so, I think it's important that some people make reparations their primary and only, maybe even their only fight. And I think that we should show the love and grace to say that the work that Joseph Williams, who was on in the first hour, is doing in schools and winning, millions of dollars. I think it's $150 million, $175 million annual investment in Black students in LAUSD. I'm grateful that he is investing his time on that. So, Brother Michael, you might not like my answer, but I think that we're probably more closely aligned than you're giving us credit for. And I think that we're living in a time of violent white supremacy where if we're going to point to an enemy, let it be the ones who lynched Trey Reed in Mississippi last week. I do want to hand the mic over to John Wood Jr. and ask just very quickly where you stand on reparations, since that's a question.
Yeah, it's easier for me to have a long conversation about this than a short one. Of course, me and Dominique just did an hour on Freedman Friday recently on the subject. I see myself as favoring a holistically reparative pro-Black agenda from the two parties. If you're defining reparations as a sort of straightforward sort of cash compensation for the historical evils of slavery and Jim Crow, so on and so forth. On that simple premise, I have some resistance to it. Largely on the basis of the fact that point number one, I don't think that actually represents, and again, there are different versions when we start getting into what this really is, right? But the simplest version of it, I don't think represents a serious response to even the material problems facing Black America. But point number two would simply be that the country needs to ultimately be politically and socially aligned around a very deep diving fulfillment of the Reconstruction Project, essentially. And that actually goes well beyond cash reparations made on the basis of that historical injustice, but the political will to sort of move the larger conversation in that direction is not only tenuous, but is broken at the moment. And I think that a lot of times the reparation conversation tears at the potential to be able to build a more durable coalition around a broader understanding of the interests of Black people. So we would have to unpack it.
See, now we get into the disagreement part.
No.
Which we're going to have to pick up because we got exactly 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay. So you have a show on Sunday. Seconds. What time is it on?
9 a.m.
9 a.m. on Sunday. Yeah. You can hear more of John Wood Jr. This is not a drill. Airs on Saturday mornings from 8 to 10. You're welcome to call in there. There's much more to talk about. And so I hope that we stay in conversation. I've been really, really blessed to sit in Dominique's chair for this last 2 days. Grateful to her. Hope she gets some restoration and looking forward to having her back next week. You can follow me on all social media at Doc Melly Mel. My name is Melina Abdullah. You can follow the work of BLM Grassroots at BLM Grassroots on all social media. BLM LA is at BLM Los Angeles on Instagram, BLM LA on X. And you can meet me in these streets. I'm about to head over to the police commission meeting and turn up 100 West 1st Street. Meet me there at 9:30, or you can meet us on the protest lines every Wednesday, 4 o'clock, when we're protesting the district attorney and the terrible police associations that helped Nathan Hawkman get into that seat. Every Wednesday, 4 p.m. 211 West Temple. And we hope to see you on the front lines. Until next time, peace out, y'all.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree.